In this video, we are going to determine whether two given straight lines are perpendicular to each other. Those two straight lines are through these 2 points and these 2 points. First, let's talk about what makes two straight lines perpendicular. So let's say here is one line and here is another line. These two straight lines are perpendicular to each other, meaning they have 90 degrees angle between them. Now I call the slope of this line M1 and the slope of this line M2. Two straight lines, if they are perpendicular to each other, then the product of their slopes, that means if you multiply their slopes, then you should get -1. This statement holds in both directions, meaning if two straight lines are perpendicular, then the product of their slopes is going to be -1, and conversely, if the product of slopes of two straight lines is -1, then the lines must be perpendicular to each other. So we are going to use the slope formula and determine the slopes of this line and then compare them. Let me call the slope of this line M1 and the slope of this line M2. Now we are going to use the slope formula. M is equal to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, and find M1 first. And let me label this point x1, y1 and this point x2, y2. Now my M1 is going to be following y2 minus y1. Okay, y2 minus y1. Here is my y2, -1/2, minus y1. My y1 is -3/4, so I'm going to put it inside the parentheses to avoid any confusion. Then x2 is -2/3 minus x1 is -1/3. I'm going to put it inside the parentheses. Now I'm going to simplify it further. M1 is equal to, in the denominator, 2/3 plus 1/3, because these two negatives multiplied is going to give me positive. Similarly, on the numerator, these two negatives when multiplied is going to give me positive. So I'm going to write positive 3/4, and then don't forget the -1/2. This is -1/2. Now let's continue. M1 is equal to, in the denominator, 2/3 plus 1/3 is going to be 3/3, which is just 1. On the numerator, -1/2, I'm going to write it as 2/4. Why 2/4? Because this has 4 in the denominator. Please note, -1/2, I multiply it by 2, divided by 2, that gives me -2 on the numerator, and in the denominator 4. So that's how I write it. Plus 3/4. If I continue simplification, I get, in the numerator, -2 plus 3/4, in the denominator 3/3, which tells me M1 is equal to 1/4 in the numerator, in the denominator 1, so my M1 is equal to 1/4. Now similarly, I'm going to find M2, slope of the second line. Let's call this one x1, y1, x2, y2. So my M2 is going to be equal to y2 minus y1. y2 is 5, y1 is 1. So 5 minus 1. x2 is 2 minus x1 is 1. So that's going to give me 5 minus 1 is 4, 2 minus 1 is 1. So my M2 is equal to 4. Now these two slopes are not equal, therefore these two straight lines are not parallel. Now let's determine whether the lines are perpendicular. Now let's go ahead and check this out. M1 times M2 is equal to, M1 is 1/4 times M2 is 4, which is going to be just 1, because 4 and 4 are going to cancel. I made this problem on purpose. Sometimes students see, oh, m1 times m2 is 1. They're going to say the lines are perpendicular. Actually, no. Note that m1 times m2 has to be negative 1. It is 1 here, not negative 1. Therefore, these two lines are not perpendicular. They will be perpendicular only if the product of the slopes is negative 1, as the formula says. I hope that this discussion was helpful. Thank you very much.